Greetings, and welcome to what I think is the 30th episode of our Morrowind Modding Interview series. This series has been on hiatus for a little bit, so I can't quite remember where we were before, but in any event, today we have NullCascade, the author of the recently published MWSE 2.0, and also the MWSE Nightly Build, not to mention quite a few different mods like Sophisticated Save System for this year's Modathon. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for agreeing to do an interview with me today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for doing these. They've been really interesting to past, so that trend continues.
Oh yes, the important thing is that we continue to get modders like you who actually participate, so, maybe encourage some of the others out there to, just sign up for these things.
I'll try to get Greatness 7 to not be so shy and get on one of these.
Oh yes, I'd love to get him on, but he has been reluctant in the past. Now, sort of just jumping right into the intro questions here, when did you first start playing Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls in general?
So Morrowind was my first Elder Scrolls. I got it for Christmas from an 12-year-old or whatever that I was. I didn't really have a high opinion of games that adults chose, so I probably sat on it for quite a few months before I got into it. Once I did, I figured out that instruction set was there and entire world was editable, and I back.
Oh gosh, sitting on Morrowind, I can't even imagine.
Like a crime. Man, could have had another 6 months or so of Morrowinding as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't lived yet until you've played Morrowind, so you basically delayed your life by 6 months.
It's the greatest regret of my life.
Well, it probably should be, but anyway, moving on. What was your first mod, and how did you get the idea for it?
I mean, if we're talking just like the first thing I did in the construction set, I around in that as a kid a lot. First technical released mod I have on the Nexus is compatibility release version of more detailed places. Work better with my install. Other than that, most of my mods released have been modathon. Wouldn't really consider I'm an active modder until this month.
Oh yeah, I thought a lot of your mods were fairly recent, and I don't know, have you been messing around in the CS for at least a few years now?
Yeah, I mean, I drawn with it a lot as a kid. I tool around with I want to say it's a good place to stay. I don't remember the name, but it was a cave house in Balmora between Alchemist and the Temple. I used to constantly redesign, but I never released anything.
Oh yes, I remember a place to stay. It was, I think, one of the first house mods released for Morrowind. I mean, that's a really old one right there. I think it even won entry into the Planet Elder Scrolls Hall of Fame, though I think that was more due to how just old the mod was and how popular it was in the early days, rather than the actual quality of the mod.
Yeah, it was pretty simple. I'm having trouble remembering the basic layout since I modded it so much, but I mean, it was simple, it was convenient, which is why we have a million house mods in Balmora, I guess.
Oh yes, it's true. I was actually expecting to see at least a few more of those for this year's Modathon, but so far we haven't seen any. And anyway, what draws you to modding video games?
So, probably Morrowind was my first introduction to that. Just playing around with the construction set. After that, I've always enjoyed modding games more than playing them. Uh, After Morrowind, my biggest gaming obsession became Neverwinter Nights 2, and that also has a construction set, which I've played around with way too much. And then that got me into a bunch of other sort of modding styles that I'm using now, where there's a lot of reverse engineering and sort of extending what the software is capable of rather than creating like normal content.
Oh right, Neverwinter Nights 2, that came out kind of around the time of Morrowind, didn't it? I mean, it was around 2004, and I remember there was a lot of crossover between Neverwinter Nights modders and Morrowind modders.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I never actually finished the single player campaign for that game. I found out that there were persistent online worlds, and that was like D&D but with graphics, and so I hopped right into that.
Oh yeah, I never actually got around to playing it myself. I purchased it, but never actually played it. But anyway, jumping on to some of our more specific questions, I'm rather curious. When did you get into, working with MWSE? Was it, something you jumped into right away? Or did you try making your own mods in vanilla Morrowind first, only to run into the limitations of the Morrowind scripting language?
So I haven't really worked a whole lot with Morrowind script. I jumped into the Discord for some reason or other, and found out that there was a lot of uh, sort of limitations about what the game could still do. So I guess I should rewind a second. Originally, when I came back to Morrowind this cycle, as you do, I wanted to get involved into Open Morrowind. But the development environment for Windows is kind of bad, and the game's very unstable on most of my machines. So I figured it was easier to just knock off a few new features for Greatness 7 in MWSE. And that sort of revealed some architectural flaws in the way MWSE was designed, which turned into a 3 or 4 month redesign of the system. So I guess to answer your question, I haven't made a whole lot of content mods before I started working on MWSE, other than what I've released for this modding competition.
Oh yeah, that's sort of what I figured, given that, most of your mods so far have been MWSC related, other than, as you mentioned before, that compatibility patches for more detailed places.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I've always been more interested in providing tools to modders and sort of cracking open game systems to expose more than I have in actually making mods. But then you came around offering PNG files, and I had to get involved.
Ah yes, so those achievements, they're just so addictive. I mean, sure, you have to embed them yourself into your own mod description, and there's no real organized system, but, you gotta have them.
You do. Optional.
Now, sort of on a related topic, this is a user-submitted question from Greatness7. Is MWSC your first reverse engineering project? And if not, what sparked your interest in the subject?
No, so I've done reverse engineering for Neverwinter Nights 2 as well. Met a great community member there called Skywing that sort of taught me a lot of what I know and got me sort of interested in the whole design. It's a server client architectured game, so we have overrides into the client machine via client extension and through the server via a Neverwinter Nights extender process, which I've done contributions to both of them.
Neverwinter Nights again, so you've done a fair bit of work on that game in particular?
Yeah, done. Actually, still host a server. We do PnP style persistent world narrative, so it's like a 24/7 D&D campaign where people can come on and DM or join as players. We have servers representing a bunch of different geographical regions in Faerun.
Oh, if you'd like, you can send me that information and we can just post it on the interview video.
Sure, I'll do that.
Now, just moving on to our next topic here, as sort of clarification, what are some of the things that modders can do with MWSE 2.0 and 2.1 that they can't do, with the CS? And more importantly, what features or functions might be of interest to the average modder? Modders like myself, who admittedly, otherwise don't really use complicated scripts in their own mods.
So MWSE isn't really a product that is made to sort of sell like a whole new feature in 2.0 or previous. It's mostly a bunch of little features added to get around limitations in Morrowind's scripting language. So there's no way to like get the name of the helmet that was equipped. So now there's a way to do that. There are hundreds of MWSE functions, but a lot of them that are most commonly used have to do with iterating over cell content. So you're like looking to see if the player has an item in their inventory that has a certain thing related to it, or is the name of their sword something special that you want to do something with, or is the player looking at something like a door, and is that door locked? Well, then okay, let's add some bashing mechanics for that. 2.0 specifically, which is where I got involved, mostly had to do with under the hood performance things, so making it so it was easier to make these scripts. An example of that would be graphic herbalism is a hugely popular mod. And how it works right now is that every single container that you see in the world has a script attached to it, because it was more performance friendly to have thousands of scripts on all these different objects than to just get what the player was looking at and do some logic based on that. Well, that's now the reverse is true. So if someone were to rewrite graphic herbalism, they would have to detach all those scripts and make them natural containers, and then basically make it based on what the player is looking at.
Oh yes, I seem to remember that in vanilla Morrowind anyway, the number of constant background scripts you had going on did kind of really drag on performance a bit.
Yeah, the way MWSE 1.0 or 0.9 or whatever you want to call it handled memory management was just kind of really bad. As far as 2.1, the nightly builds, as you called them, that adds a whole new way to release mods and a whole sort of new way of scripting entirely. So rather than look at, okay, every frame I want to see what the player is looking at, and if they are looking at a plant and they press the activation key, I want to do this. You no longer have to have that global script running. You have an event, and the event system and all the scripting for 2.1 is in Lua. You have an event that you can register for, and you're like, you can ask to get information on when the player activates an object in the game, either via a specific reference or via just basically anything that you look at. So my harvesting mod, Happy Harvesting, uses that event and then checks to see if what you activated was a organic container, and then will transfer its inventory into yours, if so. So it provides a sort of new ESP-less way to script mods based on hooking game events rather than doing per frame or object-based frame logic.
Well, that certainly does sound a bit more efficient and probably easier as well.
Certainly. I put out Happy Harvesting in, I think, an hour or so. I don't know how long it took graphic herbalism to made. Granted, it has models and extra features. And then I know Halbe has been working on a climbing script for Open Morrowind, and another Morrowind modder has done that in Lua now, and it took them just a couple of days to get it working rather than months. I think sort of getting around these sort of hacky implementations that we have via Morrowind scripting language and providing something that's a lot cleaner and faster to iterate on will be a great boon to modders. You don't have to sort of go about and recompile scripts. You just change your script and restart the game, and it picks up. You don't have to work in the CS or deal with the construction set compiler, and then if that doesn't work, going to the MW edit script compiler or messing around with any of that. You just have simple text files you edit.
Oh yeah, and that should be quite handy, particularly given that the Morrowind script compiler is a bit on, well, the notorious side.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. There's just so much wrong with Morrowind scripting language that it just seemed easier to break away from it and go into something like Python or Lua and offer that than to deal with trying to add like string support to the language. It's just not worth messing with.
Oh yeah, the Morrowind scripting language had quite a few limitations, and sort of on a very similar topic here. What are some of the features currently planned in the pipeline for MWSE 2.2? I believe there was some mention of a UI.
Yeah, so 2.0 was sort of laying the groundwork for the work I actually wanted to do. And that starts with 2.1 with Lua scripting and event-driven logic. 2. 2.1 also brings in a little bit of d-hard coding, but it's mostly just as it relates to making sure we have parity with Morrowind scripting language. 2.2, I want my focus to be on the UI system. Most of that's already figured out, but the plan is to be able to make it so you can create your own UIs or override Morrowind's UI system. So you can do things like just a simple message box would be great, right? So you can get some string input from the user. You can make mods like writing enhanced be able to be remade in MWSE. And just general UI related things. We've also cracked open the scene graph, so you can go through the rendering system in Morrowind and look to see sort of what models are loaded and what the hierarchy and what's attached to what. We use this for model switching, so you can make an object that is modeled to have multiple states switch between those states. So you can have like a rock that when you activate it, the model for that rock doesn't explicitly change model files. It switches to a different switch state in that file. So 2.3 is where I want to do a lot of de-hard coding of the render system to let you sort of do things like attach new nodes to the player. So you could do things like a weapon sheath mod, where you attach a new graphic to the player and you can toggle that on and off or do whatever you want there, or perhaps make some new particles or things graphic related. And then throughout all that, general de-hard coding is the plan. So at some point I also want to tackle the AI system and make it so you can sort of change the logic, have creatures that have custom AI, all that sort of thing. There's so much we could do with the system, and thanks to the groundwork that I don't know how to pronounce his name, Hirschman. He did just so much fantastic work and shared his research with me that this is all very much doable.
Ah, well, that all sounds pretty exciting, but, just one problem I have here is, well, is Morrowind without terrible AI? Is that even really Morrowind? I mean, isn't the definition of Morrowind having bad AI?
Yeah, I'll admit it has its charms, but think you can make the AI worse too. Not all projects have to be for good.
Oh, yes, that is true, I guess. You could make it so the AI will not only get confused by hills, but also just run around in circles pointlessly, I suppose.
It very much fit into the game. I look forward to that mod.
Now, going on to another user-submitted question here. Which of the MWSC features that you've worked on are you most proud of?
I'm not really sure. The rewrite was big. That was also built on the work of just a really, really ancient branch of MWSE. So having that performance gain was a big boon that I was proud of. But just the Lua feature implementation in general, I'm really proud of. Just being able to have event-driven logic rather than frame-driven logic. It's not like a specific, really, really nice feature. It's sort of the doors that it opens and what modders will be able to do that I'm proud of.
Oh yes, it does kind of sound like it's going to potentially revolutionize the way that mods will be scripted in the future. And, oh gosh, I did want to ask, but I sort of skipped over this before. You mentioned, before with the UI, how in-depth are we talking about with the potential for UIs in MWSE 2.2 and going forward? I mean, will mods be able to add new stats or graphics to the user interface? Like, for example, Frostwind? Would Frostwind be able to make some sort of graphic for temperature reading and thirst or hunger or what have you?
Yeah, it all seems very, very viable from what I understand of the system right now. The Frostwind could actually do quite a bit already if they did like a Lua add-on. So one of the things I wanted from this is to be able to make sure that you could release a mod that has additional MWSE features without breaking the mod in projects like Morrowind or just the vanilla experience, or if you are using a earlier version of MWSE. So you can now load mods and have additional content that either overwrites a script. The author of Frostwind could bring in Lua and add extra events to the HUD. Just last night, I added the hooks to manipulate the MGE HUD in Lua. But with 2.2, I want to bring in more of a system, so you can get like a handle on like individual components of the UI, or create your whole new components for the UI. The UI system's actually very clean, and I think we could do a lot with it. I don't really foresee any limits. You could be able to make your own scroll panes and do all that stuff. The project that I have in mind to sort of make sure this is feature complete is to make a equivalent to the Sky UI mod management system, so that mods can register their settings somewhere, and we could have like an in-game interface for changing settings that isn't driven by message boxes. And I think that's completely viable too.
Oh yes, that's one of the things I noticed, going from Morrowind to Oblivion and Skyrim, is that they do have a lot of UI mods, which obviously we don't, which is very confusing for someone who's been stuck in the Morrowind modding community for so long. Is just this strange concept of changing the UI. I mean, it seems like utter madness to me.
Yeah, we've sort of approached things differently. You can certainly see the progression from Morrowind scripting extender to the Oblivion one to the Skyrim one. We didn't offer DLL overrides, or not overrides, but we didn't offer DLL injection either. So a lot of these mods, like not Frostwind, Frostfall, bring in their own code that they've compiled, and it interfaces with the engine, and they can get or add or change whatever information they need, or do sort of their own logic that isn't limited by the Papyrus scripting language. So we didn't have that before, but now we can sort of load that arbitrary code and sort of break through whatever limits that the Morrowind scripting sandbox imposed.
Well, breaking limits is always a good thing. I always hate to think that there are some things that the Skyrim modding community actually has that we don't. After all, we are the superior modding community.
I don't disagree.
But going on to this next user-submitted question here, how satisfied are you with the number of mods utilizing MWSE functions?
Quite satisfied. There's been a history of using it before, but MWSE again was sort of an attempt to sort of add to the limited Morrowind script before. But now with the changes, we've seen actually quite a few new Lua-based mods. Greatness 7 has mods that he hasn't released yet. Hopefully I can get him to release. That sort of add poison to the game, or a new positioning system. We have people sort of changing and fixing shaders. We have all the mods that I released. I think that there will be quite a bit of activity with this new scripting system that I've added. So it's kind of early to say. Morrowind mostly moves pretty slowly, but I'm optimistic.
Oh yeah, and there's also SV Engineer's, various mods. I think he's modified Sky Diversity to also use Lua now. And, well, I guess we've come upon the topic that everyone is probably listening to this for. Inevitably, we do have to talk about OpenMW, because MWSE and OpenMW are currently, as far as I know, incompatible, and as both projects continue to develop, that still is going to cause a few issues. Have there been any attempts to try and reconcile these conflicts so MWSE mods can work with OpenMW?
Yeah, so Open Morrowind kind of has me bummed out. But as I said before, I did design this system with Open Morrowind in mind, so that you can have one version of your mod that doesn't make use of any scripting extender features. Say you're Tamara rebuilt or someone. You have all your normal things. It works in both engines. On top of that, you can add some Lua files in your package that load up and replace the logic of those scripts so that you can make them do something either easier or fancier. This sort of lets you sort of ship one zip file and have support for both. But Open Morrowind in general sort of has me a little down. I actually was involved in the project back when it was transitioning out of the D scripting language. I did the initial hosting of their forum and website, and owned the domain for them. And I've tried to get back into Open Morrowind, as sort of my education and my career progressed. But every time I go to it, the sort of the development environment is very Linux flavored rather than Windows specific, or rather than Windows optimal. So it takes some modders, literally days just to try to get Morrowind to compile on anything other than Linux. And then beyond that, I keep going to play it, and it hangs or crashes. I'll get excited about going to do TS3MP, and that will freeze on me a whole bunch. So it kind of is just really disappointing for me. So I originally wanted to get into Open Morrowind when I came back to this community, but just the stability and the development cycle just wasn't a fan of it. I figured I could do a couple of new features for MWSE, make some modders happy, and then it sort of continued on from there, where I ended up rewriting MWSE and being more dedicated to that. As far as compatibility, I've also tried to offer to make my 2.1 Lua APIs compatible with them, but they, I say they, I tried to talk to Zini about it, but he just didn't really want to come to the table. He says that MWC won't be integrated, or the sort of idea of MWC and arbitrary code additions are not something that he's interested in. So don't really have a good answer for it. It sounds like they wanna go their direction and don't really care about being backwards compatible with MWSE.
Yes, I've done a couple of interviews with Zinni, and this topic sort of came up. And one of the things I think I noticed here is that I don't know if he quite understands the number of mods that use MWSE to some extent. I mean, in the interview we did, I got the impression that he thought it was only maybe a couple dozen or so, but in reality, it's I think a few hundred, and it's just strange that a project that is aiming for, Morrowind mod compatibility out of the gate is sort of ignoring a rather large segment of the Morrowind mods available.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. Two quotes from him that sort of really just, I don't want to say broke my heart, but really just made me disappointed were that he said that he wasn't going to add the ability to execute arbitrary code from script, which I think is why OBSE and SKSE are so big as they are. And then he said that MWSE just isn't an option for his project, and that he's going to cover all the features of MWSE in his design document, but they'll all have to be rewritten for Open Morrowind. So I don't know. I've made the offer, and hopefully people bug him, and I'd love people to make if Open Morrowind chooses to use a scripting language like Lua, I'd love to make it so that modders could just write their code once and it works in both systems. But he just doesn't seem terribly interested.
And that does kind of feel like it's a new development. The last time I talked to him, which was, admittedly like 2 years ago in 2016, he sounded like he was potentially interested in maybe doing MWSE compatibility for post OpenMW 1.0, and that it might be a feature for the future after they figured out everything else, but it kind of sounds like that's no longer the case.
Yeah, that was my impression as well. But after talking to him on the forums, I don't know. I'm not the most diplomatic guy, so I just probably came across like a jerk to him. But it's it's just really disappointing to me.
Oh yes, and you're probably not alone there. And on a similar topic, this is another user-submitted question from Greatness7. With MWSC now giving more power than ever to modders, debates about setting limits have begun to arise. The OpenMW team leads have, been adamant that security is of the utmost importance. What are your opinions on the matter? Is there a satisfying middle ground to be found here?
So, this is a hard question because their concerns are completely valid. The new scripting language lets you do. You're downloading basically fully capable programs to your computer rather than just a ESP file that has a couple of lines of Morrowind script in it. So if someone wanted to deliver a virus via this new system, they could. But Oblivion and Skyrim have had these features for years and years now, and I don't think I've ever heard of a Skyrim delivered virus before. Modders need to, be careful and don't download sketchy software, just like you wouldn't go to, some weird site and download some weird program. You shouldn't download, sketchy mods from people. But I think with, popular sites like the Nexus, where there's accountability, and if someone tried to deliver something malicious there, I think they'd get shut down pretty fast. I don't think it's an issue worth worrying about. So sure, they're right, but we have so much history of having these features in other games, and it's never been an issue, so I'm just not really that concerned with it.
Oh yes, I can't think of really any, mods pretending, or, well, mods uploaded as viruses that really happened at any time in the history of our community. I seem to recall, I think, that the Nexus implemented, their virus scanning software more as a response to public opinion rather than a specific incident, though I can't quite remember if there was something or not. I don't think there was.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I mean, every time you download like Pluggy or Frostfall or any of these mods that ship with a Oblivion or Skyrim DLL, that's all precompiled code, and that's not limited to Morrowind's or Oblivion's or Skyrim's sandbox. So they can go and they can delete your files, or they can do whatever. But what they're actually doing is loading in some extra library that they need, or they're adding some functionality or some logic that isn't possible or isn't viable to write in the sandbox. And I think offering that power to modders is more important than trying to keep security in mind for sort of what we are. Something could be caught pretty easily, and I don't think it's worth limiting modders in the name of security. To be clear, a lot of other projects also use Lua for this system. A bunch of emulators, a bunch of professional software. I think OBS uses it. It's not an uncommon practice. and it's not really common for viruses to be delivered via plugins to the software. I mean, if you can convince a user to download your plugin or your code, you've sort of already won as a malicious software writer, right? Like, just getting them to download something is enough. I mean, if you can convince someone to download a SKSE plugin, you can probably convince them to download an executable and run it.
Oh yeah, that's true. And let's see. Oh gosh, Lua has been around for quite a while, hasn't it? And it is a pretty popular programming language, I think. So it does seem like a pretty good, method of expanding modding capability. So it's unfortunate that I guess OpenMW is still not going to open up to a negotiation here.
I mean, they might still use Lua. If they do, it's going to be sandbox, so you can't like call out to extra things. An example of this would be Sky Diversity, right? Sky Diversity comes around and it like meshes files together using an external library and changes your files so that your skies are sort of dynamic, right? That requires things that aren't very specific to either Morrowind or Open Morrowind. So if you want to have the game talk to this external system of code that you designed, you can't do that if there's a sandbox in your way. So mods like Sky Diversity in its current form just wouldn't be possible with that sandbox.
Which is unfortunate because Sky Diversity is an excellent mod. It's the most complicated mod I've ever had to install, but it really does, graphically, it is just really impressive.
Yeah, it is. Hopefully the latest version with the Lua language should be less complicated to install. It should just get up and install launch its own things without you having to sort of run things in the background or do anything fancy. And hopefully it's a lot easier for that sort of mod to be made now.
Oh, definitely. And I guess going on to some more less OpenMW-centric questions here. Currently, you're the most prolific modder in this year's modathon, with I think it's now 8 mods released, unless I'm mistaken, though Alistair has now tied you. How do you feel about your chances of winning the competition so far?
There are multiple winners, right? I mean, 60 mods, 8 released by me. I think there's a pretty decent chance. I also have the advantage of sort of being the MWSE author and being able to like grab up the new low-hanging fruit. So, I hooked a save system. Well, before anyone else can even read docs or I can put out docs, I can just use this system and make a quick mod for it. So I have some pretty big advantages there. I don't know. I think my chances are all right. I really want that PNG file, so hopefully I can keep my most prolific status.
Oh yes, and there are multiple winners, but there's only one mod of the month, and currently, Sophisticated Save System is number 1 on the Nexus Hot Files for Morrowind, and it's also the most endorsed mod for this year's modathon so far, so you might be looking at a few more of those PNG files.
That's exciting news. I love PNG files. I think that's a mod that Morrowind really needed. Just being able to have save 10 minutes ago that you are sure is going to be there. Nothing's worse than playing Morrowind and traversing through the wilderness and crashing or dying at some point and going, oh shoot, what was my last save? It was 2 hours ago? Well, that just makes you close the game. It makes me close the game anyway.
Oh yeah, and it's, something that's happened to absolutely everyone who has ever played Morrowind, is that they have lost progress due to dying, or screwing up and killing a main quest character or something, and having to load back only to realize that the last save was quite a while ago.
Yep. So hopefully this helps.
Oh yes, and it's almost kind of a shame that Morrowind didn't have these sort of auto-saving features that Oblivion and Skyrim did, auto-saving between cells and all that was something introduced with Oblivion that Morrowind seriously needed, because there was no real automatic way of auto-saving, I don't think. I mean, sleeping really is a manual optional thing, so yeah, even auto-saving was very much not really auto-saving.
Yeah, it was definitely a system that could be improved. I think that's also a good example of sort of what I'm trying to offer to modders. I mean, we have the whole save system sort of de-hard-coded-ish. I mean, you can see what file name the player is saving, what they named it. You can change that information. You can redirect it. So what I do is I detect if it's trying to make autosave or quick save, and it renames the file to be sort of my tokenized file name, and will change all that behavior. And then if they try to do a quick load, I offer an event for that, so that you can say, well, you're trying to quick load, and by the normal game engine, quick load only loads quicksave.ess. But instead, we're going to load your last save file, which might have been the autosave 10 minutes ago, or the autosave when you rested, or whenever. So sort of this is the de-hard coding of game mechanics that I want to offer modders.
So wait, so you can see the save information with MWSE 2.1, and you can also modify it? Is that right? Because that would mean some very curious potential concepts like immersive madness with Sheogorath or something, just loading up and finding all your saves have been renamed.
Well, it doesn't allow you to like open ESS files and rename them. What happens is you register for an event, like the save event, and you get parameters for that event, and so you get the file name that was going to be generated, and you get the save name that was going to be generated. And you can cancel the event, which prevents the save, or you can change these values. So you can say, well, instead of having their save in this cell be quick save or test save or whatever, you can say, oh, you're saving in a Sheogorath layer. Well, your save name's now going to be this weird bunker thing, or I'm not going to even let you save in this cell, or whatever your mod wants to do.
Or let there be cheese.
Yeah, you can change whatever you want.
All right, that is very interesting, and I would be very curious to see, given some of the interesting features of last year's Morrowind Marathon Month winner, Immersive Madness, what someone could do with that sort of concept.
I hope they'll revisit the mod with some MWSE in mind. They can add it without destroying OpenMW compatibility, and there's some really cool features he could do.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And going on to another user-submitted question here. In a community that's notorious for long development times, I believe the phrase on Discord is to be released in 2090. The pace of your work is, kind of unbelievable. What's the secret? Is, an army of coders just hidden away in your basement or something?
No, it's just I don't know. I've always been pretty dedicated to this stuff. As I said before, I've liked modding more than playing. So if you can play 4 or 8 hours a day, or whatever an addiction would be, I'd mod for 4 or 8 hours a day. Just addicted to that instead. I don't have a really good answer for that. I don't drink caffeine. I don't have programmers at my desk. Just a lot of dedication, and a lot of good work done before me. Porting MWSE to a new version was pretty simple. I mean, people already had logic. I just had to clean it up and make it a bit more stable. And then the research done by other people has been invaluable. I think I started rewriting MWSE in like November, and I released 2.0 in February, and now I'm hopefully going to release MWSE 2.1 next month. And it would not be anywhere near that fast of a turnaround if it weren't for the research done by others.
And that is a really quick turnaround. I mean, you're talking about a community where the average release date is delayed all the time, just delay, delay, delay. I mean, we're still waiting on Greatness 7's Poison mod, for example, but we also have Dramatic Vivek and all these other projects that just get delayed, delayed, delayed.
A lot of that tools. I think there was an anecdote from Google where, they were working on their own video software, and it would take them months and months and months to get a feature out, and then their competitor would get it out in a matter of days, or they'd release a new feature and Google couldn't keep up. And so they're like, well, why is this happening? And it turns out, well, you're coding everything in C while everyone else is working in Python. It's all about choosing the right tool for the job. And Morrowind script and the construction set aren't very good tools, so it really limits modders. I have the advantage of working in this fancy new Lua, where I can rapidly iterate and don't need to sort of spend a bunch of time wasted in the construction set, so I can do fast turnarounds.
Oh yeah, I think you released, like, what was it, 3 mods in the first week of the modathon? I mean, that is pretty quick.
Yeah, they're all pretty simple. I think that like Happy Harvest is probably like 100 lines of code, and it works with every ingredient in the game, no matter what mod you have installed. If I were to try to do something like that with just like a sort of herbalism for purist approach, I'd have to, work with every object in the game and attach a script to each and every one, and copy and paste that code, modify it, and then, oh well, Tamarind Rebuilt exists, so I have to make a patch for that, and then when they release a new version, I have to maintain that patch. It's just so much more work to do it that way. With the new way, it's pretty simple and easy.
Oh yes, and speaking of, that would also work with Skyrim Home of the Nords and Province Cyrodiil, which of course, add tons of new plants and things that presumably are not going to be covered by graphic herbalism.
Yeah, that mod's designed to make sort of it. The way it works is that it will, whenever you try to activate something, it will look to see if what you're activating is a container, if that container is organic and it's not scripted and it's not owned. And if it is, then it will just transfer its inventory to your inventory and give you a message of what you harvested. So because that logic is very generic, it works with any mod out there, hopefully. So if graphic herbalism touches it, then, well, it's going to be scripted, so graphic herbalism will take precedence. But if graphic herbalism hasn't gotten around to making a Skyrim Home of the Nords version, then my mod will work just fine.
And it checks to see if an object is owned, so you don't accidentally steal something.
Yeah. It has to be a conscious decision to steal it.
Well, that's a pretty handy feature. And on a similar topic, are there any new mods outside of, specifically working on development updates for MWSE that you're planning on in the near future?
I don't have a whole lot of ideas, but I have to release something, or Alistair's going to pass me up. There's talk in Discord about having a key that advances to the next music track, so maybe I'll add that today.
Oh, you know what would be nice is an option to sort of like if the battle music starts playing, for example, just have it switch back over to explore music instead, because that has always been something that's bothered me in Morrowind.
Yeah, I want to. I have to do some more research on the audio system, but I want to add a system of events to allow a new music system to be added to the game. So you could have like certain music tracks to different regions and all that fun stuff. But I don't think that'll be released this month, just because I want quick and easy mods to get those numbers up.
Oh yeah, a lot of the, I think it was the jukebox mods for Morrowind are kind of really pretty simple if you think about it. They require renaming files, audio files, and then putting them manually into your directory instead of a more, dynamic system.
Yeah, they didn't really expose a lot to MW script to allow good music mods to be made, but that can change with MWSE. I do have a couple of other things that sort of are bouncing around my head to work on. I want to make a mod that allows the game logic to be decoupled from the UI system, so that you could, like when you open a book, the game doesn't pause, or when you open your inventory, the game doesn't pause. That'd be like we have in TS3MP. I think that'd be really fun. And then I want to make an updater from auto updater for MWSE, so that it will, when you launch the game, it will download the latest version if there's a new version, and then next time you launch, it'll ask if you want to install the new version or not. And some of the mods could use replacements. Like once I have a GUI system, Mel's teleport mod could use a new system, where it uses a GUI to ask what you want to name it, and you have a GUI for looking at your marks. Pursuit Enhance could probably use a cleaner rewrite. Same with GCD. There's one sort of non-gameplay mod that I have an idea for, but I just don't have the toolset expertise or area design. I'm no Melkar or anything. And I've wanted to make a companion with that lives in a soul gem. That's sort of the inspiration for my Sounds of Souls mod. So you can have a soul gem that you can like go into when you have a companion there that doesn't really join in your fighting, but makes quips and sort of is part of your journey despite being trapped in a soul gem.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a few interesting concepts and ideas, and also quite a few different mods to develop. So it sounds like you've got a lot of material. I do find the one feature I found really interesting there is the whole idea of not being able to pause the game by opening your inventory. It's like you're in the middle of the battle, and it's like, oh no, I forgot to assign my health potion to a hotkey. It's like, oh no, too late, you're dead.
That goes really well with my permadeath mod and my mod that only lets you drink 1 to 4 potions at a time.
Oh, good heavens. I mean, you're really trying to make this game as hard as possible. And we have all these Steam reviewers, complaining, Morrowind is too hard, it's impossible.
It's not hard enough. I've always enjoyed the low levels more than the high levels. I feel like you sort of become a god around like level 10 to 15, and the game just gets way too easy after that. So when I do my next playthrough, I'm going to use my proportional progressions mod to sort of change the rate at which skills level. The config file for that lets you make it so that your skills will level more slowly based on a bunch of different criteria. So I'll make it so that level 1 to 5 are normal, and then level 5 to 10 takes longer for you to level up skills, and so on and so forth.
Now, sort of on a similar note here, pretty much all of your mods have been gameplay mods of one kind or another. And you sort of mentioned this before. Do you think you'll, gradually expand to other kinds of modding, like quest mods or dungeon mods? Or do you plan to keep doing gameplay mods? Or maybe come up with some way of doing dungeon mods via Lua, maybe? I don't know. We did have that, randomly generated dungeon modding concept for a while there in the early to mid 2000s.
I might expand. Some of it is just a matter of time. I've sort of hyper specialized in programming, so that when I go into the construction set and make a cave interior, I'll spend like 10 hours making this cave, and the cave's, it has some clutter. It's not like total bare bones, but it's not work that I'm super proud of. Well, those 10 hours I could do so much more for MWSE, and I could make it so that other modders can do a bunch of fancier things. So I've always sort of felt it was a better use of my time to make tools for modders rather than mod myself in those areas, because I'd rather sort of make it so that someone like Melakor could do something really fancy and then see what he makes with it, rather than just trying to make it myself.
That's certainly a rather noble concept. So, you're just going to continue working on tools and gameplay mods then?
Probably. I really like the Soul Gem companion thing. I might play with that, but I don't make any promises. After Modathon, I'll probably just mostly work on MWSE. Save most of my mod ideas for either show other people how to make them, or save them for next year's competition.
Well, don't forget, we do have one more competition this year, Morrowind Modding Madness, starting in October.
Yeah, true. I don't know if I'll join in on that. Again, I'd rather be sort of a community resource and help all the teams with their scripting sort of questions or whatever than join one team.
Oh, well, and, sort of going back to another question here. What would you consider to be your best mod released so far?
um, I really like Sound of Souls. Uh, so I mean, my save system is the most popular one, as you said, and I think it offers a whole lot of interesting things. Modders really like my expeditious exit mod, just so the game closes when you hit X rather than crashing or making you restart or anything. Um, but the one I'm most proud of is Sounds of Souls, which is a mod that makes it so soul gems play the sounds of the creatures inside the soul gem. So if you pick up a like Golden Saint soul gem, it will make one of the sounds that this Golden Saint would make. Or if you're walking through a cell, like you're going through the Balmora Mages Guild, you might hear something from Gelbadir's desk sort of chitter at you. I think it's a kind of fun atmospheric mod that isn't just sort of a core gameplay mod, but it's no, there's some creativity there, which is unusual. My environment's usually pretty sterile, so I like that one.
Oh, yeah, I haven't really played much with it quite yet, but it does sound like it is a bit, well, kind of creepy.
I mean, soul gems are creepy.
Well, yeah, if you think about it too much, but you're not supposed to think about it too much. It's like thinking about Pokemon balls. I mean, really, it's a really creepy concept, but, forget about it. Just have fun.
I have fun making creepy mods, so I like Sounds of Souls.
Now, I've mentioned this in Discord before, but do you have any plans of maybe making some sort of in-game achievement system? As I understand it, an achievements user interface, as you've explained already, should be possible with MWSE 2.2, and in the future, a replacement for the currently defunct Great House Security Census and Excise achievement system, should be possible, and definitely would be a boon to the community, I think.
Yeah, so a replacement to Fliggerty's mod could be done now with just 2.1. You could hook the save event, load in a networking library like Lua sockets, and communicate with web server. It's and you can load all the player stats and do whatever. The main issue that I have is that I don't I don't really like web development. So if I had a guy that was willing to do all the web hosting and web design and sort of do all the CSS and HTML and JavaScript, I'd totally be on board with making a replacement for that. It's completely viable to make right now with the current nightly build of MWSE. Just need someone to do it and to host the backend infrastructure.
Well, moving on to some more general modding questions. Do you do any planning before you start a mod? And if yes, how?
Kind of. I'll go into Discord and say, well, okay, I need mod ideas. Uh, people want a something that modifies skill progression or something. So I'll ask what sort of features they'd want from that. Uh, I'm usually really good about documentation, other than MWSE itself doesn't have very good documentation, but hopefully my mods have good documentation. So I'll plan out sort of what functions need to go where and how I'm going to accomplish it, and then I'll write out the logic. So yeah, I think I do. That's sort of really ties into the question earlier about sort of getting things done. I break down a lot of my projects sort of into bite-sized chunks that I can put on a list, and then I get the sort of sense of achievement from crossing everything off the list. So I'll say, well, I want to make a save system. Okay, the save system needs to do this, 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 and this, and then I'll implement one feature and I'll cross it off the list, and that's a feel-good moment. And then I move on to the next one. Same thing in my professional life. I love using systems like Jira to manage projects and make sure that I feel like I'm moving forward rather than sort of spinning my wheels and looking at a code base saying, okay, what do I want to do next, and sort of feeling lost. If I don't have that structure, I am nowhere near as efficient.
Well, sounds like you're fairly organized, and speaking of documentation, one of the judges for this year's modathon was just joking that we should have had an achievement for including a README file because a lot of them don't have README files apparently.
Yeah, mine are all hidden. Danae couldn't find them at first, just because of where I have them organized. Yeah, readmes are kind of a pain for I think a lot of people. It's I feel like I spend more time on the header image, the name, and the README for the mod than the actual mod content itself.
Oh yeah, I can understand that with some of your mods, like you said, like Happy Harvesting. It's only 100 lines of code. So yeah, a README file and documentation probably takes longer.
Yep. All my mods aren't on GitHub if anyone wants to take a look at them. Just NullCascade / Morrowind mods. And yeah, Happy Harvesting comments and everything is in white space is 74 lines. Pretty simple.
Oh yeah, and we'll include a link to that in the video description below. And another question here is, have you been influenced by any non-Elder Scrolls games when you mod? And I'm presuming that's probably a yes, given how much you've worked with Neverwinter Nights.
Yeah, that's certainly, you predicted my answer. That is my inspiration, I guess. I'm sort of obsessive, so I don't play a whole lot of different games. I spent many years working on Neverwinter Nights 2, and then I'm hopefully going to spend quite a bit of time in Morrowind, coming back to it. So it's I don't have a wide breadth of inspiration. It's mostly just Neverwinter Nights 2 and people I worked with there.
Now, have you been inspired by any modders in the community, or been influenced by them in some way? And if so, what was it about the work that inspired you?
I really find sort of a lot of inspiration in Superstars, Tel'Uvrith, and Melikor's interiors, but I think the biggest influence on my work has been Greatness 7, because it's all if I can summarize MWSE, it'd be, answering every feature request that Greatness 7 has come up with. You'll be, in the channel every day asking, hey, I want to do this, let me do this, and then that's what I'm doing. So he's definitely been the biggest influence.
Oh yeah, I was kind of expecting you to say Greatness 7. I wasn't really expecting Superstar and Melkor, though, given, your general field of modding.
No, I mean, the mods that I enjoy playing are different than the mods I enjoy, or that I feel would be good for me to create. So I find a lot of inspiration from those other modders, even though they're not sort of making the same mods that I would make.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because I've always kind of found that well, some modders are more drawn to their own sort of categories, like province modders are obsessed with province mods. As a quest and dungeon modder, I'm pretty obsessed with quest and dungeon mods, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I see these interiors people will make, and I think, well, okay, cool, those are really awesome. What sort of weird scripted traps can we come up with? What sort of quests that what quests can we make that have scripting behind them that would make a person go, whoa, hold on, I didn't know the game could do that. Like someone in the coding channel the other day made a mod using Lua that he was in a sort of an arena or something, and he went to pick up a weapon, and it swapped out the weapon that he currently had equipped. So it was sort of like it felt like a different game watching it, because you'd select the glass axe or whatever on the table, and you drop your current weapon in front of you and pick up a new axe. And those little moments I think would be really fun for players going, oh, I didn't expect the game to do this. So it'd be great to to see that in gameplay mods and in area mods, where we'd have sort of new features. So I like to see that sort of thing and wonder what new features can I add to the game that would let people make even cooler things.
Oh yeah, I have to say I do love it when a quest mod sort of does that. Like, what was it? Expedition to Muzzlethin from last year's Morrowind Modathon, or let's see, Immersive Madness. Oh, ah, sorry, I'm getting confused. Expedition to Muzzlethin was last year's Morrowind Modding Madness, and Immersive Madness sort of did some of those sort of things in last year's Modathon. And of course, there's the Underground, a big, quest mod that did some really weird things with scripting way back in the day. Like, apparently, there was this one dungeon where enemies could follow you out into the exterior world space, which is just not something you expect in Morrowind.
Yeah, the first time that happens, and you think you're safe from an enemy because you went through a load door, and he appears behind you. That's just a great moment.
Oh yeah, and definitely something that can enhance content mods like quest mods and dungeon mods and that sort of thing. Now, how do you keep yourself motivated when modding or scripting?
I don't know. I just sort of am. It's what I love to do. Um, I'm your sort of stereotypical hyper focused computer geek. I love doing what I do, and this is my life, right? I go to work and I program for people, and then I come home and I program for myself.
Oh yes, I guess that's pretty straightforward. I guess you don't do anything extra like put on some music to help you think better or something like that.
Not usually. I like to work in silence a bit, which I guess is not usual. I don't like what my brain does when it's on caffeine or too much sugar or anything, so I don't drink coffee. I don't drink, you know, anything fancy. It's just get out of bed, get in my comfy chair, and write some code.
So wait, are you saying that you're not addicted to caffeine and you've been alive how long?
Almost 28, and yeah, I don't drink caffeine. I was a really terrible kid, and I would get even more terrible if you gave me sugar or caffeine. So my mom really didn't let me eat candy or and didn't let me drink soda. So I never really developed that addiction. And then as an adult, I'd get tea to drink, and I'd drink tea in the morning or something, and if it was caffeinated, I just felt like I couldn't focus all day. So I cut caffeine out of my diet, and no, I'm not a health freak or anything, but uh, just caffeine and alcohol and stuff I don't really do because it mucks my brain too much.
Ah, well, interesting. I have to say, personally, I'm caffeinated all the time. I almost always have a glass of, or rather a mug of English black tea with me all the time, and that just has a ton of caffeine in it.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing what caffeine does. It's not I mean it's the most popular drug in the world for a reason, right? It there's not really any downside, and it's really good at keeping most people active. I don't know if it's just something weird, my brain chemistry or something, but I don't like drinking it.
Anyway, moving on to our next question here. If you could make a single change to the capabilities of the construction set outside of, presumably the scripting capabilities, what would it be?
So I don't spend a lot of time in the construction set. All the mods I've released for Modathon, I don't yeah, none of them actually involved the construction set in any way. Um, so I don't use it enough to say. There are some really nice quality of life features, like making the dialogue window resizable, so you can see more of the system there. Um, and then some other things that Greatness 7 is working on. He has a little auto hotkey sort of client or an extension to the construction set that he plays with that might turn into a real mod at some point. But I guess getting to the actual answer of your question, if I could add a new one feature, it'd be filtering for the lists in the main sort of content list. panes, tabs, things. When I was developing the area, it'd be so much nicer if I could just type in, whatever prefix I need and only show those tiles. Or if I could type in flora and it shows all the flora without having to scroll down or start typing or anything. Make lookups a lot easier.
Oh yeah, that would be handy, though. At the same time, you might need to rename everything in Morrowind, because some of their object naming systems are a bit inconsistent.
Yeah. It's kind of disappointing that the Open Morrowind construction set isn't really, better. But there could be a lot of work done to sort of make tools that make modders' lives easier.
Oh yeah, I think I've probably spent hours of my life trying to search for a particular object that I know is there around somewhere. I just can't remember the exact, name of it. And due to the interesting naming system that Bethesda uses, it takes forever, and you have to just keep scrolling down, searching through, placing the object in the game, and it's like, oh no, it's not that one. Okay, next.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'll take a look at a construction set enhancer later on once I'm done getting MWSE sort of up to par.
Oh yeah, that definitely sounds like a good idea. And gosh, I think on this next question you've already basically answered it before, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you anyway. How much do you use the community to get feedback and motivation for your mods?
Almost exclusively. All the mods I have basically came from, other than Sounds of Souls, came from talking to people in the community and saying, what sort of simple mod do you wish could be made, but would be a major pain to make in Morrowind script, and then working off of that. And then all my work in MWSE is all about asking modders, mostly Greatness 7, about what they need and what they want, and adding those so that they can do it.
Moving on, are there any skills that you've learned from modding, and if so, have you been able to use these skills elsewhere?
Certainly. I am mostly self-taught when it comes to programming. I do have an AS, but that's not saying a whole lot. So I learned a lot from people in the Neverwinter Nights 2 community, and then that got me the experience to get a job working on doing QA for a game engine, a cross-platform game engine. And then I took my experience in that position to go from working on sort of QA stuff to actually fixing the bugs, and got upgraded to a core engineer. And that sort of launched my career such as it is. So definitely a lot of crossover.
Oh yeah, I was about to say that. I thought you were a bit of a programmer.
Yeah, a couple of hints there.
Like, mentioning before that you go to work and do programming or coding, and then come back home and do programming and coding. That was a pretty big hint right there.
What can I say? When you get down to it, I'm a pretty boring guy. I write a lot of code, and I drink a lot of water. That's how I describe my life. And eat a lot of pizza.
Good God, drink water? I've never heard of such a strange concept.
Yeah, turns out we kind of need to do it.
I don't think I've had water in years. I mean, water that isn't tea.
Poor man.
Poor man? Poor man? No, clearly tea is superior.
Alright. You wake up with your tea, I wake up with my ice water. It's, I think the comment section will totally agree with you, but it works for me.
Ice water? First thing in the morning? Good heavens.
You have to wait. It's really hard to wake up if you don't have caffeine.
I guess I never really thought about it that way.
It's a bleak existence.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. Now, this next question kind of has a limited scope, because most of your mods have been released in the last month. But do you have a mod that hasn't received enough acclaim as you think it should have? And if so, which one and why?
I mean, I'll mention Sounds of Souls again, but I think the better answer would be the Discord mod that I made. Just because I don't think it sort of gets the recognition of what it represents that modders can do. That was the first sort of mod related to 2.1 that I released, and it seems sort of simple on the surface. It lets you, if you spend much time in Discord, you can see like what games people are playing, and then if a game supports Twitch presence, it will let you see like, how long their match has been or what they're doing in the game. So this is a very simple mod, again, less than 100 lines of code, that lets Morrowind expose that information. So it'll show like what area you're in, who you're playing, what level they are, what class they are, all that fun stuff. Which is the first mod that sort of breaks out with real-time information interfacing with other code. So like Oblivion and Skyrim always had these DLL plugins that they could load up, which could do anything. And this was the first Morrowind mod that sort of represented sort of the breakings of the chains of the Morrowind sandbox and what you can do.
Oh yeah, I have to admit I haven't really looked at that one too much because I don't really use the Discord app. I just use Discord in the browser, and I quite honestly don't really like the idea of people seeing what I'm doing. But it does sound like a pretty handy feature, and kind of similar to the Synthesis and Excise office again, though obviously that wasn't in real time. You had to like manually upload your data at the end of each session.
Yeah, like I said before, that the Fligurities mod could be really easily rewritten using Lua. We just need someone to make the interface for it. I'd be willing to do all the coding, Morrowind side, if someone is willing to do the all the web design. I could also host. I have a couple of servers. I could stick it somewhere.
Oh yeah, I guess if anyone is listening, who is also into web development, would like to give that a shot, just give NullCascade a message, I guess.
Yeah, talk to me on Discord or GitHub or whatever.
Now, moving on to our next question, what mods and modders currently have your attention in the community? I know you've already mentioned Greatness 7, Stupid Store, and Melkor.
Yeah. So, definitely Greatness 7 stuff. He has a positioner mod that I really want. It lets you sort of pick up an item Oblivion style, and you can move it around and reposition it, rotate it. It'll collide with objects and do all that fun stuff. What I also been keeping up on the climbing mod that Halbay released for Open Morrowind, which I think is amazing. And then the MWSE sort of version of that someone else is writing, which looks really cool too.
Now, are there any mods that you look at and think, I wish I made that?
Not really. Again, I'm sort of in the semi-unique position where I'm trying to empower modders, so yeah, I derive a lot of enjoyment from seeing people make stuff with my mods or with the tools that I make. So I don't really, there's not so much a jealous moment of, oh, you made that, I wanted to make that.
Oh yes, providing tools and resources is always pretty important, and well, I guess I'm kind of surprised that you don't want to do something similar to like Greatness 7 or something.
No, I mean there's plenty of mods he can make, and plenty of mods that I can make, but again, I don't probably plan on releasing mods after Modathon. It'll all be about making tools for modders.
Oh, alright, and going into our final list of questions here, what do you think about the other Elder Scrolls games like Oblivion, Skyrim, and, well, the Elder Scrolls Online?
I've never played ESO. I don't really do MMOs. I really think I'd get addicted to them, so I try to avoid them. Skyrim, I've put so many hours into Skyrim, and it's a fun game. But it's always felt sort of shallow to me for some reason. I always really try to mod it and add all these complex systems or something, but the world just doesn't appeal to me so much. Oblivion is sort of the same way as Skyrim, though it comes with a bunch of disappointment. I just remember being so hyped for Oblivion with the E3 videos and everything, and then getting it and just being so bored with the world. And after spending so many hours in Morrowind, getting that game was just really disappointing. So Skyrim's fun. Oblivion's disappointing. I never played it yet, so.
Oh yeah, I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from with Oblivion because it really seems like it was a slightly different game, pre-release. I mean, you had that, demo they showed off at E3 2005, and none of that was even in the final version, I don't think, of Oblivion when it came out.
Yeah, that was mostly it. Like there was so much hype for the game and what it said it could do. Just when I got into it, it seemed, I don't know, it was just a thin facade and no real delivery on their promises. Which I don't know. That's probably the first and last game I ever pre-ordered. If I did pre-order it, I don't remember. But definitely a shining example of why you shouldn't believe trailers or demos.
Or Todd Howard.
Yeah, that too.
Now, what do you think makes the Morrowind modding community so vibrant after more than 15 years?
Well, a large part of it is people like you, right? Keeping a presence on YouTube and helping draw in new blood. Certainly, I watch all your videos. It certainly helps. Another part of it is I think that there's just not really any other game like Morrowind. Even the later Elder Scrolls titles don't have the same flavor that Morrowind has. You come into this weird alien landscape, but it's also one that you can completely modify or tweak to your desires. So it has this constant feeling of most Elder Scrolls games where there's always something new to find even after so many years, but also sort of you want to go explore it because it's so weird and alien and fun. Yeah, there's not any game I can think of that has the same combination of modding and an interesting world that you want to mod.
Oh yeah, that is definitely true. I mean, more so definitely than Oblivion. There's just always something more to see or find or just stumble upon. Just, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, I came across just outside of Sudanine, to the south of Sudanine a bit actually, like a sack in a swamp just full of loot, which is very near the starting location, and they have all that hidden stuff around Sudanine and all this just hand placed stuff all over the world, and there's even quests that I keep coming across that I haven't seen before after 15 years of playing.
I mean, as a kid, I had that Morrowind Prophecies book, and I must have read that thing cover to cover. And it feels like after all these years, I come up, I make a big modded install, I play for a bunch of hours, and then I still find something. I'm like, whoa, is that new? Is that modded? What mod added that? And I go look it up, and it's something from the base game. And it's just, yeah, there's not many games that you can play for so long and still be surprised by.
Oh yeah, it does make it a bit difficult for showcasing though. It's like, oh, this must be the new content added by this mod. And it's like, oh, no, this is actually vanilla. Oh my.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever accidentally covered vanilla content?
I think once, maybe? Possibly twice. There were a few videos I had to take down due to wrong modded content or vanilla related content.
Yeah, there's something about Morrowind and that whole experience paired with the modding scene that makes it so vibrant.
Oh yes, definitely. And do you think there's anything the Morrowind modding community should be doing in order to continue to expand and grow in the coming years?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm biased there, but I think that new tools would really help. Open Morrowind again is the thing of the future, I think. But I think we're still quite a few years away from that. Greatness 7 has been working on an amazing Blender script and trying to get us more capabilities there. You can like design your areas in Blender, which is really fun because you get to like place down objects with physics, and it makes decorating, I think, a lot easier. And then, effort with my project, and just new tools for modders, I think, will help. And then a sort of hopefully less biased thing is that mostly the stuff that you do, helping to draw in new blood. There's always attrition in any community, but trying to get people to join projects like Tamara Rebuilt, if people never mention these projects, they'd probably have a few diehard supporters and not make much progress.
Well, I wouldn't quite say there's attrition in the community. You never really quite leave the Morrowind modding community. You just take a break for a little while.
It does feel like that.
Now, one of our very last questions here, is there any advice that you'd like to give to budding new Morrowind modders out there looking to release a first mod, or perhaps more specifically, dip their toes in with MWSE?
Well, I wouldn't advise dipping your toes in right this second with 2.1. You'll have to get in the Discord and basically have me help you. Documentation is waiting until after Modathon, so it's kind of scarce. But just in general, release your content. You're not going to get any better if you don't put yourself out there. If you're programming, put it open source, and if people comment on it and you don't get the rave reviews that you're wanting, try to separate yourself from the feedback and see what you could do better and improve what you do. Ship early, ship often, and just take feedback into account.
Definitely good advice, and it kind of feels like you're pressuring Greatness 7 there again. You can't get better if you don't release anything.
Yeah, might be some of that too.
And finally, is there anyone in the community you'd like to, just give a shout out to?
Yeah, and I really wish I knew how to pronounce his name, but Hirschmond, or how you pronounce it, without his research, Morrowind wouldn't be where it is today. Would have taken me, a year or two to get MWSE to this point, rather than a few months. Mirzafor for his support, and all the other authors of MWSE before me. And then for all the crap we just gave him, Greatness 7 has been invaluable in testing and helping with docs and some contributions of code to the project. He's been an amazing help. And then, everyone who's sort of helped me throughout the years. Hopefully I can help some other people learn just like I was helped. If anyone's interested in any of this stuff, I'm around the coding channel. And there are so many good resources out there to learn computer science related topics, everywhere from Khan Academy to Stanford Engineering everywhere, and MIT OpenCourseWare. Just if you have an interest in this, go learn. There's nothing stopping you. You just need a computer.
Oh yes, and as a reminder to those listening, you'll find links to the MWC Nightly Build GitHub and also the Discord down in the video description below. And anyway, that pretty much wraps up all the questions I have for you. So again, thanks for agreeing to do this interview, and it's been a pleasure.
Likewise, I've really enjoyed doing these in the past, so hopefully someone enjoys this one.